This is the hour of evening meditation on July 11, 1954, in the chapel on the Sunrise Ranch. We have been considering together principle of reciprocity. And through this pattern of meditation, we have drawn closer to an understanding of that which is essential if we are to rise above that level of function and accomplishment which is already established and widely known in the world. There has been a beginning, as we all well know, in relationship to accomplishing that which is necessary in the Lord's service in the earth. We also know that there is a need for greater power a greater degree of accomplishment than we have yet known. We have recognized that increasing power as such would not be helpful, but would only bring devastating results. We see this in the world as a whole. For man, through his application to the study of principles in physics, has reached a point where increased power is available to man's uses. But now, having that increased power, the world trembles lest it be used without control which recognizes the dignity of human life, the value of our civilization, the meaning of that which has been attained through centuries of effort and suffering. The fact that this increased power is present and increased control is not present in the world as a whole brings us to the state in which we find ourselves. There are those who would use this increased power for constructive purposes, to further the benefits which may be derived for humanity as a whole. But the control on that basis is absent. And those who do not recognize the sanctity of human life have a high degree of control means a lack of control in the sense of the constructive, and the world crumbles. Increased power in and through us without the development of the control which makes use of that power on a constructive basis would be just as devastating, just as terrible. To my mind, and if you are not in position to agree with me in this, I do not ask you to do so. I present it as my personal view. To my mind, this development with respect to atomic power and what is called the H-bomb became possible in the outer physical field only because a real step had been taken toward the increase of spiritual power through man. If the outworking of God's plan on earth had not moved forward, if there had not been real steps taken by which the spiritual power might be made manifest on earth, I do not think that man could have reached the point he has with respect to the physical manifestation of power, which we might well classify as the counterpart of spiritual power. Now, if you do not accept this view for any reason whatsoever, then you must of necessity separate in your own mind between that which is being accomplished here and that which is being accomplished in the great laboratories of the world, where the developments with respect to atomic power are being carried forward. If we fail to see the correlation between that in which we are engaged and that which commands the attention of the world, we make that to which we are called in the name of our King to be of little or no value. By such an attitude, we establish a basis on which our only hope can be defeat. Even here, where the program is centered in relationship to this ministry, where with our lips and with our minds we have recognized a degree of dedication to the Lord's service, there has not yet come a sufficiently vivid realization of the vital importance to the world as a whole, as well as to ourselves, of that in which we are engaged. It is of importance to us, but it tends to be secondary in actual practice to personal issues of various sorts in various ways. It is difficult for me to approach this subject and deal with it without making some personal reference to myself, which could be misunderstood. And if it is misunderstood, it will tend to hinder our program, at least for the time being, rather than to help. But when I have talked of spiritual power, human minds have tended to have only a very vague concept which was largely unrelated to my hearers, insofar as their consciousness was concerned. There was not a real personal consciousness of relatedness to the reality of that power. Primary dependence has not been placed in that power, in actual fact. Some of you may think that you have, but in a general sense, actually, you have not. Now, if I came into the world with a divine commission, and there's the point of possible divergence of viewpoint and opinion, and that is the reason I put it this way. Not because there is any doubt in my own mind, but because I recognize that there have been and can be doubts in other people's minds. But if I came into the world with a divine commission, which has been the motivating factor in building this ministry to this point, it is obvious that the development of the program in the overall sense would not be left strictly to that which was directly involved in the sense of this ministry as such. This that we are doing here is of utmost importance, yes. But that which I came into the world to accomplish is not in any sense limited to that which is being done here. Many cycles were established and opened up in the world to be carried forward more or less simultaneously in many fields. Not just that which was immediately in front of me in a visible sense, which has come to the point which we share in this hour. Now, to whatever degree any human mind has the idea that that in which I am engaged, and that for which I am responsible, is pictured here, that person has not yet caught the vision. From the standpoint of those who do not have a basis for that vision, a statement with respect to anything else seems to be arrogant, seems to be egotistical, seems to be utterly fantastic. And I know that. And you will recognize, having heard me a number of times, that it is very seldom that I make any definite, direct reference to myself in relationship to this development here or the world program. My business is the presenting of the truth. But as we have continued to this point, where we can begin to glimpse, at least, the actual working of the principle of reciprocity, it is carried forward to a point where I cannot refrain and be true to that commission which brought me here. I cannot refrain from bringing to your attention certain facts, whether they seem to you to be fantastic or not. But if you imagine that that in which I am engaged is limited to that which is here known and herefore, you are very wrong. There are many fields where individuals have permitted themselves to be the means by which cycles have been initiated, where those involved have absolutely no awareness of any idea that I, as a person or a being, have anything whatsoever to do with that which they are doing. They don't know anything about it. And to those who do not have the true vision, it would seem fantastic and ridiculous for me to suggest that I do have something to do about it. Because in the external sense, shall we say, I am not in position, nor am I interested, in fact. I am not in position to offer what would be classified as conclusive proof. But on the face of the evidence of that which is taking place in the world, to those who have any vision here, it will not seem so fantastic to realize that the cycles initiated were not limited to that which was directly and personally under my hand in an outer sense. This is that moving toward the fulfillment of the law in human beings so that spiritual power might manifest under control. Concurrently, other cycles were initiated through individuals who had no awareness of a personal relationship with me in the program, who had no idea that they were doing anything in relationship to a cosmic plan, generally speaking anyway, and who had no idea of any endeavor such as this. And if tonight it was suggested to them that what they are doing is related to this, probably every one of them would laugh at the idea. They would conceive it to be fantastic and ridiculous. Now, I am not in the slightest degree interested in convincing them that there is any correlation. And if you find it fantastic within yourself, I'm not interested in convincing you. But if we are to understand the significance and importance of what we are doing, we need to begin to see it. We need to begin to know, not just from the standpoint of what I know, but the standpoint of what we all know. Because if this is not seen and accepted and realized, we are never going to reach the point where we can exert the essential control to prevent the other cycles which have been opened up concurrently from going clear out of control. And if they go out of control, whose fault will it be? Will we say, well, that was the fault of the Soviet dictatorship? Well, they perhaps played a part, or will play a part, in helping to make things go out from under control, or at least seem to. But whose fault will it be? Yours and mine. I will share the fault because I share with you the responsibility of this program. You share with me. And I have accepted you in that capacity. And when it comes right down to it, what you do, as long as you accept, even on the surface, a part with me in this program, what you do is my responsibility. If you do something wrong, I have to share the results of that wrong action. If I didn't, I couldn't protect you from the results of your wrong action. And have I ever done so? Do any of you here know that I have protected you from the results of your wrong action in the past? If I had not accepted you and accepted the possibility of having to suffer from the results of your wrong action, I wouldn't have been in position to protect you one iota. That's the basic fact, whether it's understood or not, whether it's accepted or not. So, what you do is my responsibility, and if you do something wrong, I have to share the results of that wrong action as if I myself had done it, as if I had spoken the words or done the deed, whatever it may be. I have to share it too. So, on this basis, I do quite a number of wrong things every day. And I have to share the consequences. And I don't think you've ever heard me complaining about it, have you? No. I'm not complaining about it now. I'm merely pointing to the facts, whether you're capable as yet of seeing it and knowing it or not. I share the consequences. Now, unless you see that and know it, and recognize that if these things get out from under control in the world, it's going to be our fault, yours and mine. We will never come to an adequate realization of our responsibility or what we can do about it if we will. That is the thing that I have been so urgently seeking to find a way of lifting you to a level of consciousness where you could see it if I spoke of it. Because not too far in the past, if I had tried to say something about it, it wouldn't have meant anything. It wouldn't have accomplished anything. And we shall see whether it does now. The point is that these cycles that were open in various fields. The cycle that developed and came to a head in relationship to atomic power. It was shaped into atomic bombs and the H-bomb, etc. All of these things, they are the results of cycles opened on earth for which I am responsible. Whether anyone else on the face of the earth knows it or acknowledges it or not, I am. And for goodness sakes, don't go out and try to convince somebody else of that, because they will say your leader is a crackpot. And they'll have a right to believe it, too, because they have no basis of understanding what I'm talking about. None at all. I hope you have. I've worked for some time to do everything possible so that you would have. But these cycles that have opened, cycles that are working in the fields of medicine, in the heart of the medical profession. They don't know it. And they don't need to know it. I wouldn't turn my hand over to try to convince them. But I have to know it. And I have to know what to do about it. Cycles that are at work in the armed forces of our country. Cycles that are at work in the realms of government. Not just in the United States, by the way. Cycles that are at work in every field of human endeavor that appears to the world to have any significance or importance. In every cycle of endeavor which the world thinks to be important, I have a personal responsibility. With respect to cycles that were initiated and opened and set in motion concurrently with this development which you share here consciously. And the control factors essential to keeping those cycles moving correctly depends upon what I get done here. It cannot be controlled in a direct sense through those cycles themselves. No matter which one we might touch or examine or talk about tonight, that is the case. I've mentioned specifically the realm of atomic power because that is perhaps the most spectacular one, and the one which is forcing the issue as far as we are concerned. It is. I've avoided talking very much about it because I did not want to produce fear in you. If you will look back, every time I've even made reference to the development of the atomic power situation in the world, I've been very careful to leave it so that it wouldn't produce any fear reactions in you. And if I produce fear reactions in you by what I say tonight, well, I will be hindering my own work and the fulfilling of my own responsibilities. So, we have that which is getting ahead of us. It's getting out of hand. The control factors have not developed as rapidly as I had anticipated and they haven't developed as rapidly as some of these other cycles have developed. Some of them are behind us in development and are not pushing us at all. A number of the cycles that have been working concurrently with this program are behind us in development. Not enough to make it a matter of concern, but they're not pushing us any. But some of them are getting too much ahead of us. And this one is far enough ahead of us to cause us real concern. Not worry, not fear, but concern. Constructive concern. Now, if this idea were presented to the people of the world who have not had the basis of understanding which has been granted you, they would come to one conclusion, that I am suffering from an hallucination. I would be classified as being out of gear as much as if I were imagining myself to be Napoleon. Now, if we attempted to tell someone who didn't have a basis of understanding, I wouldn't blame them for thinking that. Not in the least. And if you talk out of turn and start producing that attitude in others, they will sure enough think I am, and you will have hurt the program rather than helping it. Now, I could conceivably have said, I'm going to call a special meeting, and I'm going to be selective. I'll only let you and you and you come in, and you and you and you will have to stay out, because maybe you wouldn't understand. But I don't work it that way. How many times have I done that? Do you know of any? No. I have accepted all of you in relationship to this endeavor. To varying degrees, you have become integrated in the program. Some of you just more or less on the fringe, and some of you really in the heart of it. But all of you are a part of it. We've reached a point where actually I didn't have any choice left but to bring this to your attention, not to try to force you to do something, no, but to help establish in your consciousness a deeper realization of the real significance of that in which we are engaged. Why do you suppose I have had the attitude I have had with respect to the outworking of all these factors in diplomatic circles and world controversies? If you look back and analyze it, you will see that I couldn't very well have had the attitude that I did have on any basis other than this. Knowing that if we function correctly and establish the machinery, there would be a control factor beyond and above anything that the world has conceived of. I have not found fault with United Nations program, the UN. I have worked to support it, but I have not acted as if my whole faith were pinned in it. There was something on above, something beyond possible that those people who were working so diligently there didn't know about. Do you suppose that the UN itself could be a cycle operating concurrently with what we are doing and having a direct relationship with it? I leave you to draw your own conclusion. But if there is such a relationship, we would have to admit that it is another one of those cycles which is pushing us. It's developed beyond the point where we are in position to function adequately and effectively in relationship to it. Now, from the standpoint of the fulfillment of the divine plan, it is expected that my part in it, or the relationship between this and that, will not be known for a long time to come. I am not interested in establishing any idea of relatedness. Actually, any effort to do so would hinder us, would spoil us, would make our program more difficult, and might even defeat us. And if any of you really want to make trouble for me, there's a good way to do it. I'm playing my cards on the table, trusting you. Now, these things are getting ahead of us. And every move I have made heretofore to get you here and the others who are working with us to a point of consciousness where you could understand what it was all about and get some idea of what we could do about it, you have defeated me. Not consciously, not intentionally, but one way or another, by reaction or pulling this way or doing something, failing to let the cycle carry through. Now, I'm not saying that in condemnation or criticism or fault finding, just simply as a fact, whether we like it or not. But the cycle has worked out now to the point where you've come near enough to it through recent hours of meditation which we have shared, so that I had no choice but to tell you. Now, if you don't like such a big responsibility, if you don't like to be associated where this idea exists, or where the leader has such a fantastic idea, or where there is such a great responsibility, now is the time to pull out. If you don't want to share it, now is the time to pull out and sever connections with me. Because, as far as I'm concerned, that is what it is. And whether you're aware of it, or have been or not, it's my responsibility, and if you're going to continue to share this ministry with me, you're going to have to share that responsibility. So, this is it. And we've got a job to do that we have not been doing. Properly and effectively. It's getting ahead of us, and there is not a sufficiently strong and effective control pattern in operation. And if it goes out from under control, it'll be my fault. Now, if we take a good look at it, you will see, I am sure, that any idea that just this program right here, immediately at hand, could somehow, all by its little self, accomplish what had to be accomplished in the world. Well, some of you stumbled over that, and you've asked me about it, and I've heard you talking and arguing about it, and I couldn't say a word. And some of you felt, I just don't think it can be done. Or at least not in this generation, maybe generations from now. But people have said, well, I think Uranda's undertaken something that can't be done. It's fantastic. There's too much to do. It's too big. It can't be done. Maybe someday, but not now. From the standpoint of the idea that just what you see right here on Sunrise Ranch, and it's 100, and our various groups scattered around the country, would be able to do the whole thing as if we had to do it all by ourselves, that would, to my mind, be fantastic. And did I ever tell you that that was the case? I don't think one of you can look back and say that I said that we were going to have to do it all by ourselves. But I have suggested that there were other people in the world who would have a part and a share. Perhaps I didn't undertake to tell you just how, but these other cycles were open, and they have been working concurrently with this one, with the idea, as far as the divine design is concerned, that this one would develop rapidly enough to provide the essential spiritual control to keep the others in hand, without their knowing anything about it. They don't need to know anything about it. It isn't at all essential to the accomplishment of our purpose that they should know anything about it, at least not for quite a long while. But if you look back, I did tell you, I think at least once, that every activity upon the face of the earth, every church, every school, every educational institution, every philosophy, the whole works was, in one way or another, insofar as its initial aspects were concerned, or the truth that was contained in it was concerned, or insofar as its value was concerned, it was all a part of the program of the Third Sacred School. Did any of you ever hear me make a statement to that effect? Certainly you have. I don't think it went very deep in some minds because it sounded a little bit, well, beyond comprehension, shall we say, to put it gently. But these programs are moving concurrently with this one. If we had to wait until we reached the point where we had all the control and could be assured that you and you and you and you would be in your place and all completely prepared, and then we would open up these other cycles. Do you know, before we could get to the point of using them, you'd be dead, and it'd have to be done all over again. And there wouldn't be any chance of doing what we set out to do. The only hope of doing the job was to initiate the cycles concurrently. And there were qualified individuals in the realm of science and all of its different phases, etc., to initiate and carry on these other cycles, and they were used for that purpose. Whether they knew anything about it or not is beside the point. But it was left to me to personally oversee the development of the program which should reach the point where the vibrational or spiritual pattern of control should arise and in season be made manifest, so that it would be there when the time came when it was needed, so that these other cycles might be kept in the range of control and accomplish that which was needed. Now, whether I'm going to be successful in that depends to a high degree on you. I'm not in any sense admitting defeat. I am forced to admit that we're not as far along as we ought to be. And you know whose fault it is? Mine. Mine. I can't point to any person or persons on the face of the earth when I go before my king and say, well, you know, he or she didn't do so good. I guess that's the reason I didn't get the job done. When I make my report, it'll be just one thing. If I don't get it done, just one thing. I failed. That's all. Now, this power that I have been talking to you about for so long, the spiritual power, the power of the Holy Spirit, or whatever else you want to call it, can manifest only on certain controlled conditions. The development of the counterpart of that power in the physical world has moved on apace and is ahead of us. Atomic bombs, etc. I'm not at all concerned about the atomic bombs if we reach the point where we exert the counterpart power correctly. But if we don't, we will have helped to produce a Frankenstein monster which will destroy it. And I'll be it. I'm not afraid of any such consequence. I just hope that we can get the job done so that it doesn't happen, because a lot of people would suffer. A lot of people that don't need to suffer would suffer. It's not for myself that I'm concerned. It's for you and a lot of others, millions of them. this counterpart power in the spiritual sense needs to manifest. I can't just keep on talking about it year after year. You in the class have been hearing recordings of what I said last year and the year before. Transcripts or something. I haven't just suddenly started talking about it in the last 30 days, you know. You have the evidence that I've been working on the theme for quite a while. The theme of spiritual power that permits the actual doing of something on earth. Some of you perhaps had various ideas, perhaps some rather fantastic ones, almost as fantastic as the truth. How would this power work when it got here? I told you that God works through human beings in natural channels, didn't I? Do you think you're the only human beings on earth? Not by a long shot. There are a lot of people out there. And they're doing something too. The scientists, all of the programs, the atomic power plant, the UN, and others like things. They're a part of it. How is this power going to accomplish so much? By simply working through the human beings that are already in their respective fields in relationship to control. Have I ever said anything to you about control that's important? Did I ever? Is there something out there that needs control? And how are they going to get it? Are you going to go out there with a club and say, now do it this way or else? I'll hit you. The only way that there will be any control that amounts to a snap of your finger is for it to manifest spiritually from the secret place. And did I ever say anything about the secret place or heavenly magic or any of these other things? Hinted, suggested, anything else? Have I? You're not going to have to go out and do what Oppenheimer did or someone else. They have done or are doing their job. It's wonderful. I've watched it with tremendous interest. Did you ever notice that? That I have an interest in all these things that are going on? Is it just casually as a bystander? Not at all. It's a part of my job. And they're my people, whether they know it or not, just as much as you are. They don't have to know it. You do. Because you were supposed to provide me with a means of having a control pattern that would keep them from hurting themselves and a lot of other people. But what they did had to be done. Some people imagine that the world would be better off if the atomic bomb idea had never been developed. I don't agree. It's important. I'm not going to tell you how or why or just what part it's going to play. Beside the point anyway. You can enter into a lot of speculation now and spoil it. And speculation will not get you anywhere. If you become fearful, that won't help. If you start trying and struggling, that won't help. And in human strength alone, you can't do a thing in the world about it, and you know it. Can we do something about it? Is it so fantastic? Am I just suffering from an hallucination? Illusions of grandeur or something? Got an idea that I'm much more important than I really am? A lot of ideas could be expressed, and, you know, I don't care too much. I don't want to stir up any trouble and make make it any more difficult, but those ideas don't bother me too much. My concern is, am I going to get my job done in time? If I don't, there'll be a lot of people pay an awful price for very little gain. It won't be all loss, but it could be a lot more tragic than it needs to be. There'll be some tragedy, at best. At best, there'll be tragedy. We can't prevent it all. It's impossible, because there are too many things outside of the cycles, the primary cycles that are at work. And human beings are peculiar creatures. And we've been pretty slow about getting that control pattern developed. But you've heard me talk about principle and purpose and design and control. And it's working everywhere. But how is this control to come? The control factor in manifestation. I was commissioned to get that into operation. That was my personal project. Control. Have I ever said anything about control, dominion, kingdom at hand, or any of these related subjects? What was I talking about? Just words somehow? I was seeking to help you reach a point where you could intelligently work with me in the discharge of this responsibility. And if you don't want to share that responsibility, now is the time to get out. If you do, then I'll expect something of you. Not just a little, but much. Not self-centeredness, but selfless service, to the end that this control pattern will take form and begin to have more meaning. In spite of all of the uncertain factors, there has been a good deal of control exerted in the world, whether you know it or not. A good many things have worked fairly close to the point that they were supposed to. There's been quite a bit of control, but not enough. And some of the cycles are getting ahead of us. And if we fail, and they get out of control, then I think, and that'll be that. As far as this generation is concerned, as far as possibly a number of generations are concerned, even if a few people survived on Earth, and there might very well be a few here and there, it might easily take quite a while. I pointed out, if I remember correctly, that this is man's last chance. Man as we know him, as we have his history for the past 5,000 or 6,000 years. It is. Because man as we know him wouldn't emerge in the next cycle. It would be somewhat different. But that would be speculation on your part if you tried to figure out what I mean. But it could easily take another 5,000 or 6,000 years to reach a point where we'd be this close to the victory once more. And there could be a lot of suffering in the interval, and God would have to wait. And even if 1,000 years is as one day to the Lord, Who wants to keep him waiting for even a week? I don't. It isn't my intent. I'm not saying that this is what is going to happen. I'm only pointing out that there will be a tragic result if we fail. And if that control pattern isn't made manifest, if we're there with too little, too late. That's been one of the tragic things in the world in the past in many, many ways. Too little, too late. What will it be with us? What will it be with me? We shall see what we shall see.